Welcome to True Crime Pulse. Today we transport you to the dazzling, turquoise waters of the Caribbean, where an extravagant cruise promises adventure and escape. But this idyllic setting quickly turned dark for one couple whose journey ended in unimaginable tragedy. What was meant to rekindle romance and thrill led instead to a man's brutal death and a wife's sudden disappearance. Derek Orville, a 45-year-old real estate mogul from Mankato, Minnesota, was the image of success, charismatic, outgoing, and seemingly on top of the world. Mankato, known for its sweeping cornfields and small-town values, rarely sees the kind of intrigue Derek attracted. With a magnetic personality and a reputation for boldness, he was admired by clients, friends, and neighbors alike. To many, he was more than just a successful realtor. He was a community figure, known for his thrill-seeking spirit and a life filled with exciting adventures. Whether it was skydiving, exotic vacations, or ambitious real estate ventures, Derek was always at the center of something exhilarating. But Derek's taste for excitement went beyond his professional life. He craved a thrill in his relationships, too particularly in his marriage to his wife, Janice. A quiet and reserved woman, Janice had often found herself at odds with Derek's ever-intensifying need for passion and control. Friends observed that while he was charming and friendly, Derek had a controlling streak, especially regarding his wife. Over the years, this tension had strained their marriage, though Derek seemed determined to revive the romance through unconventional means. When he heard about an adults-only Caribbean cruise designed for adventurous couples, Derek saw it as the perfect opportunity. Promising sun-soaked days, moonlit nights, and a backdrop of exotic exploration, this cruise catered to couples looking to push boundaries and spice up their relationships. Despite Janice's reluctance, Derek painted a vivid picture of excitement, intimacy, and renewed passion, a chance to reignite the spark he felt was slipping away. In his mind, this trip would be the solution to their marital troubles. But as their departure date approached, Derek was unaware of the storm quietly brewing within his marriage. On the morning of April 14, 2015, the calm on the ship was shattered. It was around 9 a.m., and most passengers were enjoying a leisurely breakfast on deck. Luisa Palacio Ortiz, a 32-year-old housekeeper from San Juan, Puerto Rico, was making her rounds, cleaning rooms as she had done for nearly 5 years. When she reached cabin 827, assigned to Derek and Janice Orville, she knocked. Receiving no response, she assumed the couple had left for breakfast or an early excursion. Using her master key, she entered the room, unaware of the nightmare waiting inside. Stepping into the room, Luisa felt an unusual, almost suffocating silence. There was a strange, heavy smell lingering in the air, something that felt out of place. As she moved further into the cabin, her eyes landed on the bed, and what she saw sent chills down her spine. Derek Orville's body lay face down, naked, with his mouth gagged and his hands bound to the bedposts with metal chains. A pillow was pressed firmly over his face, and there was no sign of movement. Frozen with shock, Luisa tried to process the horror in front of her. Her heart raced and nausea washed over her, but years of working on the ship had taught her how to handle crises calmly. Stepping back slowly, she gathered herself, backed out of the room, and bolted down the hallway. She reached the nearest phone and, with shaking hands, dialed the ship's emergency number, barely managing to relay the grisly scene she had just encountered. Within minutes, security personnel arrived at the scene and cordoned off the area to prevent other passengers from seeing the crime scene. Luisa, visibly shaken, was taken to a quiet corner of the staff area, where she was comforted by fellow crew members. She later told investigators that she had never seen anything so disturbing in her years on the ship, and she hoped she never would again. The discovery of Derek's body spread quickly among the crew, and soon whispers filled the halls of the cruise ship. Passengers, who had been blissfully unaware of the dark events unfolding just below their feet, began gathering in small clusters, whispering and speculating about the tragedy that had interrupted their dream vacation. The luxury and tranquility of the Caribbean voyage were shattered, leaving everyone on edge. Meanwhile, as the investigation began, authorities wondered where was Janice. What had transpired in cabin 827 to transform a glamorous cruise into a chilling mystery? Within an hour of the discovery, Captain Mark Reynolds had alerted the nearest port authorities in St. Thomas, U.S., Virgin Islands. By 10:30 a.m. on April 14, 2015, a team of detectives from the Virgin Islands Police Department, led by the seasoned Detective Samuel Torres, boarded the ship. Torres, known for his sharp instincts and methodical approach, arrived with a forensic specialist and her assistant, prepared to piece together the grim mystery. As the team approached cabin 827, Torres felt the eerie contrast between the luxury of the surroundings and the brutality of the crime. The suite's plush bedding, elegant furnishings, and ocean views were marred by a chilling, heavy scent of cleaning products, suggesting a deliberate attempt to erase evidence. Derek Orville's body lay undisturbed on the bed, bound in heavy industrial chains and gagged, a pillow pressed tightly over his face. It was an unnervingly clean scene, too clean. There were no signs of struggle, blood, or fingerprints, reinforcing the suspicion that the killer had meticulously covered their tracks. The medical examiner began her examination, noting the ligature marks on Derek's wrists and ankles and the blue tint of his lips, a clear sign of suffocation. She estimated his time of death to be around 2 a.m. based on the body's rigidity and temperature. Torres and his team meticulously searched the room, using luminol to detect any traces of blood. The tests came back negative, adding weight to the theory that the room had been thoroughly sanitized. Torres ordered a sweep of the cabin for any hair, fibers, or overlooked evidence, but the scene offered frustratingly few clues. It was clear they were dealing with a calculated, premeditated murder carried out by someone familiar with Derek's tendencies. As the investigation continued, Torres and his team began questioning crew members and passengers, reviewing ship logs to track anyone who might have entered or left cabin 827 that night. But their initial search yielded few leads, leaving them with a haunting mystery and more questions than answers. Their first person of interest was Janice Orville, Derek's wife of 20 years. Janice, 45, was a reserved, soft-spoken librarian from Mankato, Minnesota, the polar opposite of her charismatic husband. Described by friends as kind but timid, Janice had spent much of her life supporting Derek's ambitions, even when they led her into uncomfortable territory, including his recent fascination with this adults-only cruise. When Torres questioned Janice that afternoon, she appeared visibly shaken, clutching at tissue as her hands trembled. Cooperative but distressed, she recounted the events of the previous night in a quiet, almost whispering voice. She admitted that Derek had been thrilled about the cruise, seeing it as an opportunity to explore new dimensions of their relationship. Though she had reluctantly agreed to Derek's wife-swapping fantasy, Janice had grown increasingly uneasy with his demands. Already off balance and overwhelmed, she described feeling trapped by his insistence on pushing boundaries she wasn't comfortable crossing. According to Janice, the night before Derek's death, they argued in their cabin. Derek had demanded she join Marina Davis Lockley, a fellow passenger, in an encounter while he watched. When Janice refused, the argument became heated, leaving her feeling humiliated and angry. She insisted she had left the cabin to cool off, spending hours wandering the ship's deck, staring out at the ocean and praying for the strength to handle Derek's relentless demands. Torres pressed Janice, looking for any signs of suppressed rage that might suggest a motive for murder. Yet she maintained her composure, showing no indications of the fury that might lead to such a violent act. Despite her discomfort, Janice insisted she would never harm Derek, whom she had loved for decades. The detectives couldn't ignore her resentment and desperation, but they were left without a definitive link between her emotions and the crime. Another person of interest soon surfaced: Brian Davis, a 47-year-old investment banker from Long Island, New York, and one of Derek's new friends on the cruise. Brian embodied much of what Derek admired. He was successful, confident, and undeniably charismatic. Rumored to be a ladies' man, Brian's presence on the cruise added a new layer to the investigation, suggesting that the answer to Derek's death lay somewhere within this shadowy circle of high-stakes fantasies and hidden agendas. Brian Lockley had been married to Marina Davis Lockley, a serene British yoga instructor, for 10 years. Although they were deeply committed, their relationship was far from conventional. Brian and Marina were in an open marriage, a fact they openly shared, especially on this adults-only cruise. For Brian, joining the wife-swapping arrangement wasn't just about fulfilling marital freedoms, it was a thrill-seeking adventure that he eagerly embraced. Brian was known among friends as a smooth talker, charming and persuasive, with a knack for drawing people into his orbit. On this cruise, he quickly bonded with Derek, who shared his enthusiasm for exploring the forbidden. The two men hit it off immediately, and by the third day of the trip, they'd agreed to swap spouses. However, Derek wasn't the only one who intrigued Brian. Brian developed a deeper fascination with Derek himself, finding a strange thrill in the power dynamics Derek enjoyed imposing. The two men secretly rendezvoused in secluded areas, taking risks to indulge in passionate encounters. Their connection added a new dimension to the complex relationships developing on the ship. When Detective Samuel Torres brought Brian in for questioning, Brian appeared remarkably calm. Dressed casually in a polo shirt and khaki shorts, he looked more like a vacationer ready to hit the golf course than someone facing a murder investigation. His demeanor was relaxed, even as he admitted to Torres that he and Derek had developed a close and sexual relationship. Still, he insisted he had nothing to do with Derek's death. Brian claimed that the last time he saw Derek was during a tense encounter the previous night. Derek had pressured Brian and Marina to perform a sexual act with Janice, while Derek watched. Uncomfortable with the situation, Brian said he and Marina had excused themselves, returning to their cabin for the night. Throughout the interview, Brian remained calm, even as Torres' questions became pointed and intense. Confident and composed, Brian recounted the events with quick, direct answers. He acknowledged that the wife-swapping arrangement had soured, admitting that tension between the two couples had escalated in recent days. However, he firmly denied having any reason to harm Derek, despite the awkwardness and complications that had arisen. Keycard records confirmed Brian's alibi, showing he and Marina had returned to their cabin that night. Yet, Torres couldn't shake the feeling that Brian was hiding something. There was a potent mix of jealousy, desire, and control simmering beneath Brian's smooth exterior, a motive lurking just out of reach. Then, on April 16, 2015, 2 days after Derek's death, the case took a dramatic turn. A drizzle coated the ship's deck, and the overcast sky matched the somber mood among the crew. Frustrated by a lack of leads and limited evidence, Torres was beginning to feel the weight of the case. But that morning, a new piece of evidence emerged. A maintenance worker, Kaloy Mendez, had been cleaning a storage room when he stumbled upon a small, nondescript digital camera tucked away behind cleaning supplies. Knowing about the murder, Kaloy immediately handed the camera to security, who in turn brought it to Torres and his team. The camera, a simple handheld model, appeared scuffed, as though it had been hastily discarded. While the memory card was missing, Torres sent the device to the ship's forensic lab, hoping it might contain recoverable information. Within hours, technicians managed to retrieve several deleted files from the camera's internal memory. What they discovered was disturbing. The recovered footage revealed intimate moments between Derek, Janice, Brian, and Marina, capturing multiple encounters among the four. These videos, apparently recorded without Janice's knowledge, highlighted the increasing tension and discomfort she experienced. The final recording, taken on the night of Derek's death, showed her distress more clearly than ever, marking a dark crescendo in the tangled, volatile dynamics among the couples. One of the most unsettling clips captured a heated argument between Derek and Janice within the walls of their cabin. Derek, visibly furious, was pressuring Janice to engage in a sexual act with Marina, insisting he wanted to watch. Janice appeared distressed, her voice wavering as she begged him to stop, tears streaming down her face. Derek's relentless demands, despite her obvious discomfort, marked a breaking point. Abruptly, the video cut out, but the emotional toll on Janice was undeniable. This discovery painted a clearer picture of the tension leading up to that tragic night and provided Torres with crucial insight into Janice's mental state just hours before Derek's death. Combined with her earlier testimony, it suggested that Janice's fear and desperation may have reached a boiling point, potentially culminating in Derek's untimely demise. Now, Torres had a motive in mind, but proving Janice's involvement would require more. Meanwhile, another suspect began to emerge: Marina Davis-Lockley, a 39-year-old British yoga instructor whose calm, introspective demeanor masked an inner conflict about her participation. Married to Brian for a decade, Marina had initially agreed to the open arrangement to maintain harmony in their unconventional marriage, despite her reservations. As the cruise continued, she grew increasingly uneasy, especially around Derek, whose forceful personality clashed with her need for peace. Marina often retreated to the quieter parts of the ship, seeking solace in the vast expanse of the sea to escape the turmoil brewing in her cabin. When Torres questioned her, she admitted feeling sympathy for Janice and regret over agreeing to the wife-swapping experience. The footage from her camera, she explained, was taken in hopes of selling it to relieve their financial struggles, though she could not have predicted the tragic turn of events. Torres noted her calm but could sense a hint of underlying sadness and perhaps even relief. Was it possible that Marina, out of sympathy or protective instinct for Janice, had taken matters into her own hands? Yet, without clear evidence, Torres knew he needed more to link her directly to Derek's murder. The breakthrough in the investigation came on April 18, 2015, 4 days after Derek Orville's body was found. Detective Samuel Torres had spent days reviewing the footage recovered from the hidden camera, piecing together the events leading up to Derek's murder. The evidence pointed to only one person who had the motive, opportunity, and means to carry out the crime: Janice Orville, Derek's wife. Janice, a 45-year-old librarian from Mankato, Minnesota, had been a quiet, supportive partner throughout their 20-year marriage. But the crews had exposed the deep cracks in their relationship. Derek's domineering behavior and insistence on pushing Janice into increasingly uncomfortable sexual situations had taken a toll on her. The footage from the camera revealed Janice's growing distress, particularly during the final night of Derek's life. The video showed Derek demanding that Janice participate in a sexual act with Marina Davis while he watched, bound and gagged. Janice's tearful pleas for Derek to stop went unanswered, and the video cut off just as tensions reached a boiling point. Torres was convinced that Janice had snapped under the pressure, leading her to suffocate Derek with a pillow while he was helpless. On the morning of April 18th, Torres, along with 2 other officers, went to confront Janice in her cabin. The sun was just rising, casting a soft glow over the ship as it continued its journey through the Caribbean. Janice opened the door, her face pale and eyes red from days of sleeplessness. She knew why they were there. Torres informed Janice that she was under arrest for the murder of her husband. Janice didn't resist. Instead, she simply nodded, her hands trembling as she was handcuffed. She seemed resigned to her fate, as if the weight of the past week had finally crushed her spirit. As she was led away, other passengers watched in shocked silence, the reality of the situation sinking in. Back in Mankato, news of Janice's arrest spread quickly. The small town, where Derek had been a well-known realtor, was stunned. Friends and family struggled to reconcile the image of the quiet, unassuming librarian with the shocking crime she was accused of committing. Derek's parents were devastated. They had always seen Janice as the perfect wife for their son, and now they were grappling with the horror that she had taken his life. The arrest marked the beginning of a long legal process, but for Torres, it was the culmination of a tense and emotionally charged investigation. He had seen the toll the situation had taken on everyone involved. And while Janice's arrest brought some closure, it also left many questions about the true nature of the relationship between Derek and Janice, and how it had all gone so wrong. Janice Orville's trial began on October 12, 2015, in Miami-Dade County Court. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and the families of both Derek and Janice, all eager to see justice served. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Maria Paulina Sanchez, 38, was determined to paint Janice as a cold-blooded killer. Sanchez, known for her no-nonsense approach and sharp cross-examinations, argued that Janice had meticulously planned Derek's murder as a way to escape their failing marriage. She presented the hidden camera footage as key evidence, highlighting Janice's growing distress and the final confrontation on the night of the murder. Sanchez asserted that Janice had deliberately suffocated Derek, using the pillow as the murder weapon, in a premeditated act. The defense, led by public defender Alan Goldstein, 52, painted a very different picture. Goldstein, a seasoned attorney known for his empathetic style, argued that Janice had acted in self-defense after years of psychological abuse. He described Derek as a controlling and manipulative husband who had forced Janice into humiliating situations. Goldstein claimed that Janice's actions were the result of a mental breakdown brought on by the extreme stress of Derek's relentless pressure. Throughout the trial, Janice remained stoic, her eyes often downcast as she listened to the testimony. The Orville family sat in the front row, their grief palpable. Derek's mother, Linda Orville, broke down in tears several times, unable to comprehend how the woman she once considered a daughter could have killed her son. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning with a Janice Orville was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought some closure to Derek's family, but it also left them with a deep sense of loss. They felt the sentence was too lenient, given the brutal nature of Derek's death. Janice's family, on the other hand, expressed relief that she had not been sentenced to life in prison, though they were devastated by the outcome. The trial had been a painful experience for everyone involved, leaving scars that would take years to heal. After the trial, the lives of everyone involved were irrevocably changed. Janice Orville began serving her 50-year sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution, a women's prison in Ocala, Florida. Life behind bars was a harsh adjustment for Janice, who had spent most of her life in the quiet comfort of her Minnesota home. The once mousy librarian now faced a daily reality filled with strict routines, overcrowded cells, and limited contact with the outside world. She kept mostly to herself, spending her days reading and occasionally teaching other inmates how to read and write. Back in Mankato, Derek Orville's family struggled to move forward. His parents, Robert and Linda, were consumed by grief, unable to accept the loss of their only son. The house that once echoed with Derek's lively presence now felt unbearably empty. Robert, who had always been proud of Derek's achievements, became a shell of his former self, rarely leaving the house. Linda sought solace in her church community, finding comfort in prayer and the support of fellow parishioners, but the pain of losing Derek remained a constant companion. Ryan Davis and Marina Davis Lockley, the other couple involved in the wife-swapping arrangement, returned to Long Island after the trial. The scandal had destroyed their reputation and left their marriage in tatters. Ryan, once a successful investment banker, lost his job after the company learned about the trial and the secret recordings he had made. Marina, who had been a respected yoga instructor, found it impossible to continue teaching, as her clients abandoned her in the wake of the scandal. The couple eventually divorced, each trying to rebuild their lives separately. For the community of Mankato, the case served as a harsh reminder of how quickly life can change. The trial and its aftermath were the talk of the town for months, as people struggled to reconcile the Janice they knew with the woman convicted of such a horrific crime.